4, 3.
A conversation with Steve Dennis. Learn more right after this.
Seven 7,000 high school students drop out every school day. That's a line of desks more than 4 miles long. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg,
Doc,
how are you doing?
doing fine. And yourself?
I'm all right. I'm thinking we probably need to call out our guests pretty soon because
We're gonna need
it's
several
a ton,
shows.
a ton of material here to deal with. Our guest is going to be Steve Dennis, who's been a guest on the show before. It's been a little while.
Been a while.
But just based on the materials that he brought with him today, I'm seeing he's been busy.
Yeah, you know, Steve is I always find a very interesting character in that he's always seemed to be like he's developing even himself. You know, he's helping others, but it's like he's always never in one spot. Like he's constantly reinventing himself and growing. And I think that's really his message. You know, that we all can do that. So it's always interesting to talk to Steve and find out what his latest travels and latest things in life have brought his way.
Well, we are going to do that in just a minute when we come back from this break. Do not go away. We'll be right back.
I'm transferring to the University of West Georgia.
Columbia University,
Kennesaw State,
UGA, Loyola University in Chicago,
Grambling State.
Shorter University.
I'm going to Greensboro College, and we all got our start at Georgia Highlands.
No matter where your educational journey takes you, you can get your start at Georgia Highlands College. Georgia Highlands College. Enroll, engage, excel.
Welcome back to Community Watch, and we're very happy to have back with us again after a little while, Steve Dennis. Welcome back.
It's good to be back. Thank you very much.
It's been a while, though, hasn't it?
It has. A couple of years.
And you have been occupied. Now, I in fact, so much, I'm not even sure where to begin here. Okay. But I know that you're involved in a family violence program. Maybe that should be where we start.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for the past 4 years, I have been involved with conducting and facilitating domestic violence groups for men, perpetrators who have been involved with having a hard time keeping their hands to themselves. And about a year ago, I was approached by the DA to go ahead and start my own program when I kind of resigned from another program that I was a part of. And we got started about the last part of this past year, and it's been really exciting. My experience has been this. I take basically success principles and integrate them with my whole curriculum to help men to have more peace in themselves and to realize that the more they develop themselves. One of my slogans is this: if you work harder on yourself than you do on anybody else. And so taking care of you first and bringing more peace to your own personal life, it will overflow into your relationships as well. So we've kind of got a team going now. Kerry Ingram and his wife, and a chaplain from Hayes Prison. Darrell Ellis is a part of our team as well. And so we're really excited about providing that resource to help in the area of intervention as well as prevention with domestic violence.
Now, Steve, I'm curious, with the whole NFL thing, which I think is shameful in the sense that, you know, it ain't the NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
Domestic violence is in every community.
Right, exactly.
You know, but saying that, what does domestic violence look like in Rome? I mean, because you don't really hear about it. So do you have a lot of people that come through your program?
We do, yes. We have a pretty high number of domestic violence cases here in Rome.
Okay.
When I go to the local state conventions or local conventions or state conferences, it is amazing how Floyd County is somewhat high on the list of having a lot of cases as well as a lot of fatalities from domestic violence as well. So we have quite a bit.
Now that strikes me kind of odd in that I know we have done shows with the Hospitality House. We're kind of aware. We've participated in A Mile in Her Shoes, so we're kind of aware of the numbers. But I don't think that the average Roman realized that we have such high incidence of domestic violence in Rome, because that's not something that that's a narrative that we really don't talk about.
No, we keep it hid. What has happened in my 4.5 years of doing this, I found out from talking to men that oftentimes the subject matter has been tabooed. We don't like to talk about it. It's been kind of covered up under the rug, and no one wants to talk about what actually really goes on until the police get involved. And then all of a sudden now, we have to get involved. We have to talk about it, and we'll have to go to a program to kind of get better as well for 24 weeks. And so for 24 weeks, I'm now, to a certain degree, I have pressure on me to discuss this matter that I've been keeping hid for so many years.
Do you have any theories or any actual information that would explain why Floyd County has such a high instance of domestic violence? I mean, given the population of the area compared to some others, it is surprising to me.
Yeah, and again, I'm basing this on a lot of the information, the resources, and also interviewing different people that we've talked with, is that you have a generation of men who never had the proper mentorship of manhood. And so basically whatever pattern I saw, or even the pattern that I did not see in relationship-wise, I would take and imitate that same pattern. And so basically, they're doing what they're doing because of the fact they hadn't been properly trained. I believe this: if I take one of the chairs in this room, for an example, and smash it against the wall and break it, I don't have the skills to put it back together again. So my point is this: it takes skills to build a relationship, and I personally believe that a skill set in relationship, in the area of relationships, hasn't been taught. And as a result, we're having more and more of a violent type culture that's stimulating and activating more domestic violence as well.
Well, let me get into that.
Okay.
Or let me kind of delve into that. Because if I'm correct, and what I think I hear you saying, also part of the problem is that a lot of our kids, well, not just kids, a lot of us, we live in almost a hyper-violent communities in society.
Absolutely.
Where violence on one hand is celebrated and rewarded, but then, on the other hand, is criminal. And the reason I say that, for instance, is that right now, so many reality TV shows is based on how nasty I can be towards somebody.
Yeah.
And I don't know the research or the science, but it's hard for me to believe that you can watch those type of shows where you are made a celebrity by being nasty and hateful and mean to people, and it doesn't contribute to a mindset that contributes to other issues that can lead to domestic violence, and not just domestic violence, but violence in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we see that a lot as well. Again, when I've interviewed these men, they've talked about how they've never even heard of how to go about being more peaceful, more at ease with themselves, and at the same time practicing another skill set that will interact with or even intercept that old pattern that they had before. The good news is I've seen it happen before where men have learned some things that they've gone back into relationships, and they put those new skills into practice, and they've actually living more in paradise now instead of a problematic type relationship.
So the narrative is it can be fixed.
Absolutely,
but it takes a lot of work.
It takes a lot of work. You're talking about changing a paradigm shift, and also, again, bringing about a whole new learning model that goes completely against the one that they've grown up with. And I've had men from ages 20 all the way up to 71. in our classes as
So
well.
so that really gets them all. And probably you say 20,
Yes.
and I don't know what the court system is, but if the court system dealt with juveniles in that regard, you
Right.
probably would even have some, because the number of youth
Yeah.
that I talk to, and when you ask them about have somebody ever hit somebody like a male, you and your male friends ever hit a female,
Right.
and it is astonishing
Yeah.
the number of students that can tell you that they have seen or been a part of some kind of domestic
Right.
violence relationship at such
Exactly.
young ages.
Yep, absolutely. I think they're getting younger and younger, and I think the problem will continue to magnify until we actually take a more active role in bringing about skill type relationships, issues, and stuff.
I know you got a bunch of questions. But I'm gonna ask this last one.
This last one, you're going to just be quiet after.
Because I'm gonna tell you what bothers me: the rancor in which the American society uses in the general public. For instance, the other day I was just watching 20 Minutes, and they was talking to some couple of politicians, and they was asking about the president. When we see the amount of discourse and just really ugly discourse that is perpetrated not on just reality TV, but even by officials, leaders of this country, the nastiness that is accepted by people in power in this country. I can't help but believe, we want to say these are like isolated incidents, or these are kids in the inner city, or these are this situation, or these are these athletes who didn't have proper whatever. But I can't help but feel like we have a culture of violence that is perpetrated, perpetuated all up the chasm,
Right.
all up,
Yeah.
up and down.
Yeah.
But we don't want to address that.
No.
That violence is really a part of our culture
Yeah,
that we don't want to address.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you may have a different view on it. I'm just saying, I just can't help but feel that way. That we accept violence and we reward violence, but then we wonder why some people are violent in relationships,
No, it doesn't make sense, but I understand what you're saying. I'm wondering then, with the individuals that are in your program, do you see that many of them have similar stories then, or are they all different?
For the most part, most of them are pretty, I guess probably 90% are identical.
Identical?
Yeah. I saw mom get hit by either dad, stepdad, boyfriend, 3 boyfriends, 5 boyfriends, etc. since I was 11 years old. And I thought that it was a normal thing to do.
Let me ask you this too, DLC. So if I see mom getting hit, now we all know it's not right.
Right.
But clearly, we lack the skills because we know it's not right.
Right.
But it's something we've seen all our lives. So that's where you're talking about that deficit. Because I
Absolutely.
know it's not right,
Yeah.
but this is what I have seen.
Exactly.
And so when I get angry,
Right.
I lack the skills
Right.
to
Absolutely.
actually do something different.
Exactly, and like you said as well, and if my culture somewhat provides me with almost like the permission to do the same thing, then woman, you better watch out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the combination of just the tradition in their background,
Yes.
along with what's going on in the world around them. Well, I guess looking at it that way, it's surprising they're not more.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot that never gets reported as
Yeah.
well. So
Probably is a lot more just never
exactly.
reported.
Yeah, because again, we're not just talking about physical abuse. We're also talking about emotional abuse as well. And I'm quite sure probably 85% of that never gets reported.
Well, before we get to the next segment and we switch gears, what are something that parents and community people can do to start breaking that kind of cycle? What can we do if I know there's a young man lives next door and I know they have some trouble in their home? What can I do so that I'm not overstepping my bounds? But what can I do? Are there things I can do to help maybe that young man?
Well, if you can have a conversation and have the guts and the boldness to talk and basically use different illustrations to help get the point across. I know me personally, I talk about my own life. My life is like a looking glass. I talk about my own past and how I had to deal with my own anger issues when I was younger. And it shocks people to hear that, but when I talk about it, it allows me not just to communicate, but to also connect And so we have a disconnect. People don't want to hear from us because we're too busy trying to tell them what to do instead of conversating with them and connecting with them on their level, so we can, at the same time, hopefully insert some type of a truth that will help to set them free from whatever bondages they're dealing with.
Okay. The students that I guess you call them students or clients, are they all directed to you from the courts?
Right now, currently they are, from the probation offices as well as the DA's office. What we're anticipating is to have people that will volunteer to go ahead and just seek out our services, simply because of the fact they want to have a prevention model. Right. We've had that happen before in the past, where a man has had some issues with anger, and he says, you know what, I want to go through your class so I can at least learn some things about how to control my anger.
It'd be nice for them to avoid having to go to court to get to you.
Absolutely.
Be a lot cheaper too.
Much cheaper.
Well, we're coming up on a break here. When we come back, a lot more with Steve Dennis, so please stay with us.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Steve Dennis, who's been telling us about his family violence intervention program. But you've brought us some other materials as well about your leadership training program.
Yes.
And this is something that you had also been doing, I think, the last time you were on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it looks like it's getting more and more developed, and so catch us up. Where is this right
Okay, now? Absolutely. Well, here this past year, I was fortunate to be able to conduct a 2-day, 4-hour workshop with a company. Megan is the name of the company, located in Rockmart. They brought me down to train all their 50 supervisors that are over there, roughly about 1,100 employees. And so that was a wonderful, exciting time as well. After we finished with the 4-hour workshop, I came back and did a 2-day group coaching session. So that's something that we do as well. So companies and organizations will bring us in to implement a leadership development program to help their leaders to develop their leadership skills and their leadership abilities as well, to be able to lead others and that kind of thing. So we have a lot of fun with our workshops, and again, just really, I'm having a lot of fun doing what I do. I'm very passionate about it. It's part of my purpose.
What made you decide to take on leadership as or what made you see that need to go in this direction? I know you've been doing this for a while, but I just wondered at what point in your career or growing up or whatever it was that made you decide that this is something that's not being done and is really needed.
Got you. Well, inspiration has always been somewhat I guess a value of mine that I've always treasured. But I had a sister, an older sister, who died in a car wreck in 2009. Her name was Helen Robinson. And at the time of her death, I actually did perform the eulogy. My best friend, who was also at the funeral, Marvin Williams, he called me the next week and said, Steve, that was probably the most motivating funeral I ever been to in my life. It was a funeral, and I had people laughing as we celebrated her essence and her legacy. And so after that, I connected with my first mentor, whose name is Dr. Earl Suttle, and got in touch with him and started traveling with him, because it dawned on me that my life was meant for a whole lot more than what I was doing currently. And I wanted to play bigger with life. and not just keep sitting back and just becoming the norm in Rome, Georgia. So that was pretty much the beginning of my journey, and traveling with him for 2 years kind of somewhat exposed me and opened me up to the possibility of what I could do with my life other than what I was doing at the time. And so that was pretty much the beginning of it. I started my company in 2009 roughly, and we've been going on since then.
Well, you know, I guess one thing that I was thinking about is I don't know when leadership training became something that was recognized as a need, generally speaking. But I know that, and Greg, you may have had this experience too. I've seen so many examples of individuals who progress in their careers or make it to a certain level where they weren't maybe initially leaders, but then they're put in positions.
Yeah.
And they don't know the first thing about how to deal with people who work under them or for them, or their place in the corporation. And so I'm thinking that you must have come across in you're leading these workshops, some of that issue of people who are find themselves in leadership positions but don't really know how to do that.
Yeah, and that came from my personal background as well. At 21 years old, I was selected to be the supervisor, second shift supervisor, at that time at the Rome Youth Development Center. I was 21 years old. And I'm leading people, I'm supervisor of people who are older than to be my parents. And at that time, I had the title, but I didn't have the proper skill. And so going back over my own life, looking at the skill set that I did not have and how I developed that over the years, that also helped me and also gave me a passion about, in other words, lessons I've learned from the mistakes that I've made. And how could I help to bring about more clarity of leadership lessons for people to learn that before having to wait 5 years later. And what we are finding now is a lot of people, like you said, have been placed in leadership positions but don't have the skill set and really know what they're doing. They just have the title, but not really knowing and understanding the importance of having the skill set.
Well, I would say actually that is the norm, because if you think about it, you can go all your life and never really learn quote unquote leadership. You can have a lot of experiences, but that doesn't necessarily develop the skills for leadership. And so I think about students. How many students do we actually teach leadership skills? And so now you find yourself in college. People say go to college, you graduate college, now you find yourself in a job, you work hard, now you're in a leadership position. And all you've known is just work hard and do what your job.
Exactly.
So now your job is motivating. Getting people to do what they, getting the most out of people, and that's never been part of what you was required to do. And so I'm just wondering when we as a society will move, because it's almost, let's just be honest, it's almost, in my opinion, like leadership is reserved for a select few. Everybody's not going to be managers. Everybody's not going to be leaders. It's almost like, to have proper leadership training young, that's kind of reserved for a select few. The general population, the general students we deal with, they never really have that option, because most of us, I think, have kind of been trained to be, the worker. When you think of a leader, you don't tend to think of the worker on the floor. And I think that's part of our whole mentality that, all of us can be leaders. But are we all taught that we can be leaders?
Exactly, and we don't have that awareness that we can be, because the bottom line, a statement I used years ago that helped a person who was suicidal: would you follow you if you were the leader of yourself? Okay, so why or why not? And basically learning that the first person I must learn to lead well is me. If I can lead me well, I at least have now hope that I can at least take something, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 points from my own life, and help share that to lead others as well.
I'm going to give you credit for that one. I'm going to steal that one, Steve. That's one of those, I'm going to use that one.
Okay.
Well, I'm curious what you have discovered as some of the commonalities of the groups that you've worked with, things that they especially need, or are there commonalities?
Yes, most certainly. I've had the fortunate pleasure of traveling quite a bit. I was in Florida last year doing a keynote speech for an organization with about 180 people. And I was also at a HR, what is it, not HR, but a Human Services Convention in Helen, Georgia. And what I found out in a lot of my travels, I've been to Brazil before as well, we talked about that and spoke to over 1,100 people. But here's what I found out. Most people, what resonates with almost all types of people is simply this. Work hard on yourself and you're doing on everybody else. And here's my favorite one that women really love. Give yourself to yourself before you give yourself away. That's good, isn't it? Huh? Yeah. Don't you love that?
No, I'm going to have to think about that for a minute.
Give yourself to yourself before you give yourself away. It helps to prevent burnout. And oftentimes, if you've ever flown before, I use the analogy that when you're flying, they give you the example about if in the case of an emergency, make sure you put the oxygen mask on you first, because you can't really save anybody else until you've learned how to save yourself. And that's been, so basically most people have told me this, that they needed that most out of everything else that I've said, simply because of the fact we have a tendency of giving ourselves over to everybody else and we leave ourselves last, which leads to burnout, which leads to stress. And oftentimes,
and everything else.
Absolutely, yeah.
and taking us back to what else, to the other topic, even violence.
Exactly. Because I haven't learned how to navigate through life's pressures on my own. I know how to be a good caretaker for somebody else, but taking care of me, not too well at that.
You know, thinking about that, you know, I'm thinking there are a lot of businesses where the middle level leaders may struggle the most with that because they are carrying so much of the weight of the actual work of the corporation. You know, folks at the highest ranges maybe have the freedom to devote to themselves, like you speak. But the middle range managers are probably a wreck.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess you may have to work not only with those individuals, but with the larger system of the business.
Exactly. And I have a program that we teach on that called the 360-degree leader. And it's talking about what do you do when you're not the head person in charge? How do you, and the two D words I've placed a lot of emphasis on is recognizing the proper time to delay emotion, okay? And at the same time, when do I display emotion? So delay and display emotions. How do I handle the pressure of being in the middle? Not on top and I'm not on the bottom, I'm right slap dead in the middle. So how do I navigate that as a 360-degree leader? And again, it goes back to, I won't give it away now, but I have a whole program that we show leaders how to navigate that and how to work on themselves and develop themselves, and at the same time to utilize those skills to have their influence heightened to the leader, with the leaders on top and also the followers that are on the bottom.
Well, we've got to take another break here. Okay. When we come back, we'll give you some contact information, so please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Good one, son.
Last summer, my new dad took me on vacation. First, we went deep sea fishing.
Wow! I'm so proud of you, son.
And then we went on Thunder Shark.
That was awesome! Let's go again.
3 times. I gotta say, it was pretty cool.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
Oh, not again.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been talking with Steve Dennis, and if you want to reach out to Steve about speaking or doing a workshop or some of these issues, you may go to his website, stevedennis.org, or you may call this number, 706-290-3121. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you next time on Community Watch.